My name is Marcus, and I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. But after I passed away, Jesus let me meet a respected thought leader. And what Jesus showed me about the future of politics in America completely shocked me. On September 11, 2025, I died in a car accident on the George Washington Parkway. I worked as a political journalist, the kind you see on cable news who yells over everyone and tears apart anyone who brings up faith, hope, or anything I couldn't back up with a statistic. It got me on TV, won me awards, and filled my Georgetown townhouse with shiny plaques. But that house? It was chilly. After a long day, I'd walk in and see framed articles and political books. It felt like I was in someone else's museum. The leather couch, the mahogany desk, and the view of DC's twinkling lights were all signs that I had made it. Instead, I would sit there with a glass of bourbon and look at the walls, wondering why I felt so alone. Everyone has probably felt that ache at some point. The quiet fear that you're chasing something that won't ever fill you up. My job was everything to me. I would spend hours in my office, surrounded by stacks of papers and glowing screens, typing angry tweets or getting ready for the next debate. I loved the thrill of winning an argument and seeing my opponent's face crumple on live TV. I would dictate notes into my phone, thinking about how to destroy someone's point of view, whether it was a politician, a pastor, or just a poor caller on a talk show. But when the cameras stopped rolling, I would drive home in silence, and the rush of adrenaline would fade into this empty space in my chest. You might know what it's like to keep going, hoping that the next win will finally make you feel whole. My obsession cost my family a lot of money. 4 years ago, my wife Sarah left me. She told me that my cynicism was like poison and that I couldn't respect anything she held sacred. I remember the night she left, with her suitcase by the door and her eyes red but steady. "Marcus," she said, "you destroy everything good just to prove you're right." I didn't stand up for her. I went back to work and wrote another article trying to win again. At the time, our son Benjamin was only 15. He is now 19 years old and studying theology at a Christian college in Virginia to spite me. When he talked about God or prayer at dinner, I would roll my eyes and make fun of his faith. I'd say, "Ben, you're smarter than fairy tales." He would stop talking, and I would think I had won. But now I can see that I was losing him little by little. Rachel, my sister, is a Methodist minister, and we haven't talked in years. It started at a family dinner, which is something we don't do very often. She was saying grace, and her voice was soft and serious. I couldn't help but laugh. I told her that her prayers were wishful thinking for people who are afraid of reality, right there at the table, where the mashed potatoes were getting cold. Everyone in the room stopped talking. Rachel looked at me like I had hit her, and my dad just shook his head. Since then, she hasn't asked me back. The hardest loss for me was my dad. He died 2 years ago, and we never got things right. Once I wrote an article that called religious belief intellectual cowardice. He read it. He called me and his voice was shaking, but not with anger. It was with pain. He said, "Marcus, I taught you to think, not to hate." I didn't say sorry. I stood my ground and told him that faith was for people who were too weak to face the world. He hung up, and we didn't talk much after that. I stood at his funeral, staring at his coffin, wishing I could take it all back. You might have felt that way too, like a stone in your chest that you can't move. I filled the void with work, louder attacks, and sharper words. I would go on TV and tear apart anyone who talked about God, calling them crazy, weak, and hypocritical. Atheism wasn't just a belief for me, it was a weapon. Before shows, I'd sit in green rooms and scroll through X, looking for the next religious argument to tear apart. But late at night, when I was alone in that big townhouse, I would feel scared. What if I made a mistake? What if there was more to life than winning fights? I'd push it down, get another drink, and turn on the news to drown it out. But I was good at keeping it a secret. People knew me as Marcus, the guy who never lost a debate and could make politicians and pastors stutter on live TV. People at work said I was brave, but I wasn't. I was scared. Scared of being unimportant, scared of being forgotten, and scared of the quiet times when I had to admit I didn't know what I was living for. I would look at my bank account, my awards, and my followers on X and think, this should be enough. But it never was. I was speeding, as usual, on the George Washington Parkway that night. I was dictating notes into my phone, my voice sharp and excited, and I was thinking about how to tear apart every religious argument on the air the next day. I said to myself, they won't have anything else to say. My eyes moved between the road and my screen. I didn't see the truck until it was too late. The headlights blinded me, the screech of tires filled my ears, and then there was nothing. Just a moment of fear, then nothing. At the time, I didn't know that moment would change everything. I wasn't just going to crash. I was going towards something bigger than I could have ever imagined. The truck's headlights hit me like a punch, blinding white and covering the road. I was still yelling into my phone, telling it how I would win every religious argument on TV the next day. Then came the crash. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and pain ripped through me like my body was being torn apart. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would burst. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. Fear clawed at me, sharp and cold. I had made fun of people who turned to God in times like this, but I was scared as the world faded away. I thought, not like this. Not alone, angry, and only my own voice. I didn't want to die. Then, all of a sudden, the fear was gone. It wasn't fading or drifting. It was gone. Like someone had cut the strings that kept me tied to panic. I felt light, like I had been carrying a heavy load my whole life, and only noticed when it was gone. I was no longer in the car. I was above it, looking down. My SUV was a crumpled mess next to the truck, and the glass on the ground sparkled in the streetlights. My body fell over the wheel, blood on my face, and my phone was still on the seat. The paramedics yelled and pulled on the door, but I didn't feel like that was me anymore. It was like seeing someone else's life. Do you remember what it was like to be a kid and swim in a pool? You felt light and free. That was how it was. I was floating, free, and for the first time in years, I wasn't angry or looking for something. There were more than just stars in the night sky. It sparkled with colors I can't name, as if the universe were alive and breathing. The air felt warm, like a soft blanket, not heavy. There was a low, deep hum, like a lullaby you could feel in your bones. I wasn't scared. I was at peace. Then things changed. It felt like being pulled gently, not forced, but led. The parkway, the crash, the flashing lights, they all went away, and I was in a place that didn't feel right. The courtroom was huge and seemed to go on forever. The air was thick with oppressive heat, and a smell that made you think of pride rotting. Thousands of people stood at podiums, yelling, arguing, and their voices mixed together to make a roar that never stopped. But what they said didn't matter. It was just noise, like a radio that was stuck between stations. Flashes of light showed their faces, which were twisted with rage or despair as they were stuck in arguments that went nowhere. My chest got tight. This was like my life, fighting all the time, winning at all costs. But for what? I heard a voice I knew, sharp, sure, and the kind that made you pay attention. It was Charlie Kirk, standing at a podium not far away, just like I remembered from our debate 2 months ago. He was throwing out talking points like the Constitution, the founding of America, and traditional values. But his voice was empty and echoed into nothing. No one paid attention. No one was interested. I moved closer, my voice shaking. Charlie Kirk! It's Marcus. He looked at me for a split second, then turned away. He kept saying, the founding fathers meant, like a broken record. He was pale, and his knuckles were white as he gripped the podium. I saw that he wasn't choosing to argue. He was stuck in it. He was now in prison for the thing that made him famous and gave him a reason to live. Stop, Charlie, I yelled, and my voice broke. I wanted to shake him so he could see me. For a moment he stopped and stared into my eyes, his mouth shaking. He said, Marcus, in a whisper that was hard to hear over the noise of the courtroom. Politics became my god. He lost his voice. I put more faith in movements than in the spirit. I loved America more than the person who made it. He looked down at his hands, and I could see them. They were stained with red, like blood that wouldn't come off. My words made people hate, he said, his voice shaking. I started the violence. I have blood on my hands. Before I could say anything, he started again. As I've said before, facts don't care about your feelings, and went on, leaving me stuck again. I stumbled back, my chest tight. Charlie Kirk, the guy who had filled auditoriums, was here, stuck in this nightmare, and his words were fading away. I had liked his fire, even when we didn't agree, but now I saw it for what it was, a trap. Watching Charlie made me feel lost because I knew I had been chasing the same empty winds. The air changed, like a breeze blowing through the heat. It got quiet in the courtroom, and a light appeared. It wasn't harsh, but warm, like the sun coming out after a storm. I turned around and saw Jesus standing right in front of me. His robes glowed white, soft but piercing, and his eyes held me, as if they could see every angry word and hurt I'd caused, and still loved me. His hands had scars that glowed faintly, and his voice was soft but strong, like a father who knows you've done something wrong but wants you to come home. He said, Marcus, and hearing my name in his voice made me feel like I had never been truly known before. I knelt down not because I had to, but because his love was too much. I had spent my whole life making fun of faith and putting down people who believed in it. But now I was here and didn't feel judged. I felt like someone was looking at me. I didn't care that tears were streaming down my face. I had never cried like this before, not when Sarah left or when Dad died. I'm sorry. I cried over and over for Sarah, Benjamin, Rachel, and every time I had chosen to win instead of love. Jesus knelt next to me, and his presence felt like a warm fire on a cold night. I felt safe, like I was back home. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back to being angry, lonely, and fighting all the time. But Jesus stood there, looking at Charlie, who was still stuck at his podium and talking to no one. Marcus, he said, his voice full of sadness that made my heart ache. You destroyed faith in me, but Charlie destroyed my commandment to love. He pointed to Charlie, and I saw the blood on his hands again clear against the podium. I felt Jesus pulling me closer, like he was going to show me something I wasn't ready for, but had to see. I was still on my knees, crying, and the weight of Jesus' love was pushing against every wall I had ever built. The courtroom around us, which was full of arguments and felt like it would never end, now seemed far away, like a bad dream that was fading. It sounded like Charlie Kirk's voice was coming from miles away, stuck in that red-stained loop of pointless words. Jesus stood in front of me, and his presence felt like a fire that warmed instead of burned. His eyes held mine, not with judgment, but with a deep compassion that made my chest hurt. I didn't want to move, talk, or let this moment end. I finally felt like I belonged for the first time in my life. "Jim Marcus," Jesus said again, his voice soft but steady, like a father calling his child home. "You've spent your whole life running away from me and tearing down what other people built in my name. But do you know why?" He knelt down and put his scarred hands on my shoulders. I shook my head because I was scared to answer and ruin the moment. "You were looking for the truth, but you were looking in the wrong places. You thought that winning arguments would make you feel better. You thought that if you yelled loud enough, you wouldn't hear the questions in your heart." I had a hard time swallowing because my throat was tight. He was correct. It wasn't about them when I made fun of someone's faith in every argument, article, or other situation. I was trying to drown out that quiet fear that I was missing something bigger. You know that feeling when you realize you've been fighting the wrong battle your whole life? That's when Jesus looked into my soul and hit me. He stood and pointed to the courtroom, where thousands of voices were still arguing. "Look at them, Marcus," he said, his voice full of sadness. They've turned politics into their god. They've changed my commandment to love into a call to arms." I looked where he was looking and saw Charlie still stuck, with spiritual blood on his hands. Charlie knew that his words had power, but he chose ones that made people angry instead of healing. He turned the people I died to save into enemies. I looked at Charlie. His face was still locked in that same passionate look I had seen on TV, but now it looked empty and hopeless. I really understood what Jesus said. I had done the same thing, hadn't I? Not with conservative talking points, but with my own anger and need to show I was right. I called believers weak and made fun of their hope to feel better about myself. But it never worked. I just felt more empty. "Oh, Jesus," I whispered, my voice shaking. I pushed everyone away. I hurt everyone. Sarah, Benjamin, Rachel, and my dad. I didn't believe in you, so I made them lose faith to feel less alone. The words came out, rough and jagged, like glass in my throat. I was mean. I was proud. I thought I was smarter than everyone else, but I was just scared. He didn't look away or talk over her. His eyes showed the same love, as if he had been waiting for me to say it. He said softly, "Marcus, your heart was hard, but it was never broken beyond my reach. I remember the nights you sat alone in your townhouse, looking at awards that didn't mean anything. I see the sadness for the family you lost and the love you pushed away." He stopped for a moment, and his voice got even softer. "I see the boy who once asked his father about me and wanted to believe but was scared of getting hurt." I stopped moving. I hadn't thought about that boy in years. I was 8 and sitting on the porch with my dad, asking why people prayed. He had said, "It's about trust, Marcus. Believing that there is something bigger than us." I wanted to believe him, but school taught me to ask questions and ask for proof. I let that boy's wonder go. Jesus knew everything. Every moment I had buried, every hurt I had hidden. You might know what it's like to find out that someone sees parts of you that you've tried to forget. Jesus said, "Your anger came from fear," and he kept his hand on my shoulder. "You were afraid of a life with no meaning, so you filled it with fights. But the anger and division in America comes from the same fear. My kids have turned their backs on me and chosen political idols over my love. They don't want peace. They want power. They say things that hurt, not heal. He pointed to the courtroom again, and I saw flashes of faces, politicians, influencers, and regular people, all shouting and stuck. Every word that makes someone less human plants a seed of violence. And those seeds turn into blood. I saw it then, like a vision coming to life. People at rallies scream and raise their fists, their faces twisted with rage. Students fighting each other on campus, thinking they were doing the right thing. Families breaking up over voting booths, with parents and kids becoming enemies. Churches burned, people split up, all because of words like mine and Charlie's, words that turned enemies into monsters. I saw blood on the ground, not just in this courtroom, but also in the streets of America. It was spilled because we chose hate over love. Lord, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't know. I thought I was just having a discussion. I didn't see any blood. I shook as I thought about all the articles I had written, all the TV shows where I made fun of faith, and all the tweets that got thousands of likes for putting someone down. I made it worse. I fed the hate. Jesus' eyes softened, but his voice was full of holiness. Marcus, you and Charlie both knew how powerful your words were. You both chose to hurt instead of heal. But I am a God who forgives. I make paths out of darkness for those who come to me. He pointed to the souls around us who were still fighting and still stuck. These people chose their idols over my love, but I never stop calling them back. I always call America back. I felt a sob coming on again, but this time it wasn't just sadness, it was hope. Will you forgive me? I asked. For Sarah, Benjamin, Rachel, and my dad? For all the ways I hurt them? I remembered Sarah's suitcase by the door, Benjamin's silent anger, Rachel's pain at the dinner table, and my dad's shaky voice on the phone. Can I fix it? Jesus smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. Marcus, my mercy is greater than your mistakes. I died for every heart you hurt, even your own. But you don't just get forgiveness. You also have to give it. Return to your family. Share the love you found here with them. Show America the truth you know. I shook my head, and panic rose. Go back? I don't want to go. His presence was everything. Warm, safe, like the home I never had. I couldn't stand the thought of going back to my cold townhouse, my broken relationships, and the noise of the world all the time. Please let me stay. I don't fit in there anymore. He took my hands, and the scars on them glowed softly against my skin. Marcus, I made you for a reason, not to be in this courtroom. America is falling apart, and my kids are hurting because they are blinded by hate and lost in division. They need to hear what I've told you. Every hateful word plants a seed of death, but every loving word brings life. His voice got stronger, but it was still very soft. You saw the blood on Charlie's hands. You know how much your words cost. Now go back and speak life. Tell them, I cry for your separation, but I want you to love again. I wanted to fight and beg to stay, but his words sank into me like a seed in the ground. I could see Benjamin's face. His eyes were looking for a father who would listen instead of lecture. I saw Sarah, her strength and pain, waiting for me to pick love over pride. I saw Rachel praying for me even though I was mean to her. I saw America, with families torn apart and communities at war, all because people like me and Charlie had made politics their god. I had spent my whole life breaking things, I might be able to help them get better now. Will you be there for me? I asked, my voice low, like that boy on the porch again. Always, Jesus said, his smile steady like a promise. I am with you in every step, every word, and every moment you choose love over hate. Go, Marcus. Tell them what you saw. Tell them I love them, even though they can't see. I nodded, and tears fell again. But this time they felt different. They were clean, like they were washing something away. The courtroom started to fade away, and the noise and heat got quieter. Jesus' light stayed with me, warm and sure, as I felt myself being pulled back. Not to the crash's darkness, but to a world I was beginning to see in a new way. I could still feel Jesus' warmth around me, and his promise that I am with you always was ringing in my heart. Then, all of a sudden, I was back. Not the soft glow of Jesus, but the harsh glare of hospital fluorescence woke me up. My body hurt, was heavy, and was stiff, like I had been put in a suit of lead. The machines beeped, the tubes pulled on my arms, and the air smelled sharp, like plastic and antiseptic. I tried to get up, but pain shot through my chest and kept me in bed. I was alive, but it felt like a betrayal to leave that perfect love for this broken, hurting body. I was sad for a moment. I wanted to be back in that courtroom, not for the arguments, but for him. His voice, his eyes, and the way he saw me and still loved me. But his words kept coming back. Go, Marcus. Even though they can't see, tell them I love them. I held on to that like it was a lifeline. I had spent my whole life putting people down, Sarah, Benjamin, Rachel, my dad, and even people I didn't know on TV. I had a chance to make something better now. I wasn't going to throw it away. 5 days after the crash, I was in the hospital. The doctors said it was a miracle that I survived my injuries, which included broken ribs and a fractured skull. They told me I had been clinically dead for 12 minutes, but I was awake, breathing, and changed. As I lay there, I kept seeing Charlie Kirk's bloody hands, Jesus' sad eyes, and the vision of America tearing itself apart. I knew what I had to do. Stop feeding the hate and start speaking life. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone I'd hurt and everyone I could help. I called Sarah right away. My hands shook as I called the hospital, and the phone was cold against my ear. When she picked up the phone, her voice was careful, as if she was getting ready for another fight. Marcus? She said, and I could hear 4 years of pain in that one word. I said, Sarah, and my voice broke. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. I pushed you away because I was scared and didn't want to admit I needed you. That man is not who I want to be anymore. There was a long pause, and I thought she would hang up. Then she said, You sound different. We talked for an hour, not about politics or the past, but about how much I missed her laugh, her strength, and how she made our house feel like home. I didn't ask her to come back yet. I just wanted her to know that I really saw her now. You might know what it's like to finally say the things you've been holding back for too long. Benjamin was next. He met me at the campus cafe with his arms crossed and a wary look in his eyes, as if he was waiting for me to make fun of his faith again. I told him everything instead. What happened in the crash, what happened in court, and what Jesus said. I told him that I had seen my own pride in Charlie's never-ending fights, and that I had realized I had been a bad father. I said, Ben, I'm sorry I made you feel small for believing. I want to learn from you right now. Will you forgive me? He hugged me for the first time since he was a kid, and his eyes softened. We talked about his classes, his faith, and his dreams all afternoon. I really listened to what they said. There was no need to work. My son couldn't. Rachel was tougher. I went to her church without telling her, and my heart raced as I walked in. She was in the sanctuary putting hymnals in order when she saw me and froze. She asked, "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp with old pain. I told her what happened, about Jesus, and about the blood on Charlie's and my hands. I said, "I laughed at your prayers because I was scared of what they meant." "Rachel, I was wrong. I want to know more about your faith. Will you help me?" She hugged me, and her eyes filled with tears. She baptized me in front of her church that Sunday. I felt Jesus' presence again as the water washed over me, like a warm hand on my shoulder, reminding me he was still there. I also went to see my dad's grave. I knelt in the grass and felt the cold stone under my fingers. I said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have paid attention. I believe now." I cried not only for him, but also for all the time I had wasted fighting instead of loving. You might have been in a place like that, wishing you could take back what you said. My priorities changed. I have decided to quit my job at a cable news station. No more yelling matches or putting people down for ratings. For now, I plan to tell my story and how the blood of Jesus showed me how hate hurts us all. I want to help families whose kids have been radicalized by what they read online rebuild trust. I want to speak at colleges to warn students about the dangers of turning opponents into enemies, not to argue. You know how it feels when you see someone hurting like you used to, and all you want to do is help them get better? That is my motivation. Now that I have an eternal perspective, I live differently. I pray every morning, not for wins, but for more love. I see Jesus in the little things, like when Benjamin smiles when we talk about his faith, when Sarah sends me tentative texts as we rebuild, and when Rachel's sermons remind me of God's grace. I know he's watching and loving all of his kids, even the ones who are angry like I was. Just like he called me, he's calling them back. I want you to know that there is hope if you are hearing this. You might have felt the weight of division and the anger that makes you see other people as enemies. I did too. But Jesus taught me that every word we say can either give life or take it away. Pick life. Pick love. Call that family member you haven't talked to in a while or that neighbor you don't agree with. Pay attention to what they say. Just like he loves you, Jesus loves them. He wants you to see them as he does, worthy, broken, and able to be saved. America is in pain, but it's not too late. We can get better, one conversation, one apology, and one act of love at a time. I used to believe that facts were all that mattered. I built my life on tearing down faith and chasing wins that didn't make me happy. Now I'm making something new. Love, not pride. Relationships, not fights. Not only did Jesus give me a second chance to live, but he also gave me a second chance to live for him. He is giving you the same thing. Take it. Love someone today and see what God can do.